Arnold Blinn from GoDaddy, Kellie Peterson from Automatic, Jan Löffler from Plesk, and Pawel Kowalik from Ionos. Please, welcome up, gentlemen. Please. Welcome. Grab a chair. All right. Okay. All good? Got the microphones? Everybody know what you're doing there? I'm going to pass them back and forth. Are we set? All right. So the first things first, we need to know what Domain Connect is and how did it get started. And Arnold, I think you're the best guy to give us that intro.
Yeah, I'm happy. Oh,
there we go.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Domain Connect is an open standard that was launched about 2 or 3 years ago. In fact, we sort of launched it here at CloudFest. And what it is it's a protocol that makes it easy for users to set up DNS for a service that they're configuring. So the best example of this is, say I'm at a SaaS provider setting up a website using a website designer application, and the customer wants to attach it to their own domain that they already own, that they've purchased somewhere else. They typically would type the domain name in, and prior to Domain Connect, what the service provider would do is give the user a bunch of instructions in the form of set these A records, MX records, SRV records, and people would fail this a lot, and it would result in either unactivated services or disillusioned customers. So Domain Connect makes it easy, so when the customer types their domain name in at the service, they can, with one click, set up DNS without having to know anything about all the DNS records and so forth. And it's a protocol that works between two parties. One we call service providers, which are the people offering the services, and the other are the DNS providers. These are the companies that are running DNS, typically registrars, but they could be other companies as well.
Wonderful. Now, where did it get started? What was the foundation of this project?
Well, we implemented it at GoDaddy ourselves for our own internal use because we were having customers constantly calling our customer care, asking for help. And of course, these calls, were
I was one of those guys back in the day, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that call. So we developed it for our own use. And after we developed it, we realized the protocol is, we won't get into it in this session, but the protocol is unbelievably simple to implement. It's almost on the borderline trivial. And so we realized what we were doing was so simple, it would benefit everyone, the community, the DNS providers, the service providers, and users in particular, if we just basically documented what we were doing and made it an open source protocol.
I want to give one more follow-up question for you, Arnold. I'm sorry to keep you on the spot.
Yeah, no problem.
But the last 3 hackathons, you've brought a related project to it, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So the last 3 hackathons, at the first hackathon 3 years ago, we worked with our friends at United Domains and 1&1. They're here on stage with us. And we helped them understand the protocol and implemented our first other DNS provider. We already had many service providers working with us when we were GoDaddy. Last year, or also in that project, we built a great example service at exampleservice.domainconnect.org, where you can go and set up a fictitious website and see how the activation flow and the configuration flow works. 2 years ago, we implemented and helped our friends at Plesk implement Domain Connect as part of the Plesk platform. And we also implemented a cool little project that did a dynamic DNS service that ran on your PC. And this year, we decided to implement a example DNS provider. So we didn't really have a lot of code to help the DNS providers on board. So we built a great package that does that, and we prototyped the DNS provider support on top of Bind, on top of Power DNS, and even inside cPanel with that library.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Now let's talk a little bit about, because you're talking on the technical side of things, and that's cool. But the number one core message, and I'd like each of you to take a turn and say why this is important to hosters and why it's important to their customers. You want to start with Kellie?
Sure, sounds great. At Automatic, our number one product is WordPress.com, and we do everything we can to make the web a more simple place for our customers. A lot of people come to us because we are potentially the easiest implementation of WordPress that exists. And in doing so, we look at all of the various ways that we touch our customers' accounts, how they interact with domain names, with their websites, and like Arnold mentioned, that's one of the tough things for people to do, to understand the technical aspects of setting up a domain name to work with other web providers. So we took this as an opportunity for us to simplify not only our lives and our customer support lives, our happiness engineers' lives, but our customers. And it's been a tremendous help to hundreds, if not thousands, of our customers every single month, and makes everybody's life at Automatic much easier.
So you're seeing not only just happier customers, but you're also reducing your support load.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Jan, do you have a comment on that?
Sure. So if we look at the site owners of websites, then the majority of them are actually not technical. They have no idea what DNS is and how it works. And why should they actually? They just want to have a website, and it should be super simple. Like if you think of, Arnold, you mentioned the flower shop, that should be super easy. So there's no need to understand DNS for those guys. But eventually, if they run a server, for example, they have to configure DNS, and they need to know what this means. What is an A record? What are MX records? What's a CNAME? And Domain Connect is really the solution to make that easy, because you don't have to care that much anymore, because this is done between the connection between the service provider and the DNS provider. And for a user, you just say like, okay, I want to add my domain, nice, and it asks you, do you want to configure it now? You say yes, and all is done, and the website works, and this is the experience that it should be.
Excellent. Pawel?
Absolutely. So I can only copy what GoDaddy is seeing when it comes to support lines. What I can add on top of it, as 11 Ionos, we are a web hosting company. So we are, let's say, facing these problems, but what we are also putting a tremendous effort to maintain help sites for our customers that make easy this connection, because this was the way to be done before Domain Connect, right? To write tremendous the help articles, how to connect this website with the other website, and hope it works. No, it doesn't. It doesn't work. And right now, after these 2 years of development for Domain Connect, when we were here last year in the panel, we were talking about the snowball effect of Domain Connect, that it starts, and it really starts. So right now we have 80% of the connections that were done manually before already done through Domain Connect. And this reduces the support load. We could remove all these help sites, because right now they are confusing, they are not needed anymore. And we can make the customers happy. And if the customers are able to connect the domain in a very easy way, it means they stay with us. The domains will be renewed, and we can prove it with numbers. And I think Microsoft was also publishing in their paper the numbers, which were saying that the users that are successful with connecting the first domain, they are more happy to bring another domain to the service. So for O365, I think they saw like 15% increase for the users that connected domains with Domain Connect. So for me, these are the main arguments.
Perfect. And you've deployed. When did you deploy? When did Ionos deploy it? Was it?
So we started in January last year, and let's say during the CloudFest we had 2 providers integrated, and since then till today we had an increase, I think around 900%. So it grew constantly over the year with all services which are coming and integrating Domain Connect and doing the right thing.
Right. So it's not just a theoretical thing. It's not just a test project. We're talking about something that's being deployed in arguably the largest hosting environment in Europe.
Absolutely. For our top 10 services that are integrating with us, we already have covered 8, and the 9th is already committed to do so in the coming months. So I think we are on the good way.
Jan, talk about how did Plesk, Plesk isn't a hosting company, it's a control panel company, yes? So how did you deploy it? How is it important to you?
Yeah, let me first start 2 years ago when I saw Arnold on the hackathon working on Domain Connect, and I was kind of immediately infected by the idea to make DNS configuration simple. At that time, I still had different projects, and then I was busy through the whole year with big roadmaps. But last year then, I convinced my team and said like, hey, let's do that. Let's do that now and make it easy to configure domains. And we've done this project together with Arnold and some other guys. And 4 months later, we went on production, directly embedded into Plesk. A few weeks later, we had it in the Plesk core. And now there are 50,000 Plesk servers that support Domain Connect. And we are growing at the moment with more than 5,000 additional servers every month. And that's quite a success because that really helps users to become online more simple, easier, so without any issues. And the interesting thing with Plesk is actually that we support both sides of the protocol. So one is the DNS provider, and one is the service provider. That means you can on one side say you have a domain registered at Ionos or GoDaddy, and you just add it in Plesk and it works. But on the other side, you can say, you have your website running on Plesk, and there's your DNS server, but you want to have, for example, Google G Suite or Office 365, and that works as well, and you have a mailbox system there. And that is a seamless experience.
That's amazing. Kellie, I'm gonna flip this over to you because it's not a question that we discussed previously, but I think it's really fascinating to me. I mean, think about that. Out there. Well, quick poll of the audience. Who out there is a hosting company? Most of you. Who out there works in the realm of software or CMSs? Okay, so look who's on the stage. Arguably, you have the largest CMS on the planet. You have two of the largest hosting and domain providers on the planet, and one of the largest control panels on the planet, and they all agree. Don't tell them, they might start arguing anyway, but they all agree that this is a good solution. What does it tell you about this particular product, Kellie, that so many people, so many important organizations are getting behind it?
Well, I think we're at a time in the industry where everybody is trying to find ways to make life easier, not only for us, but for our customers. And there's obviously been an evolution over my career in the industry, which spans 20 years in multiple companies. But I remember when I first started out trying to do installs of WordPress, and I was thrilled when one-click installs became a thing, right? And this is kind of an evolution of that. It's the one-click setup of a domain to various providers or various services. And I don't think that this will be the last evolution that we'll see within the industry to kind of a standard way of almost table stakes. This is not something that everybody in the room will be able to ignore much longer, because if you are not servicing your customer in this way, somebody else who supports this will, because your customers don't want to be dealing with this. Even if they know how to, why should they have to?
Wonderful. Now we all know that your four organizations are supporting this project. Who else? Who else is on board? Who wants to talk? Who wants to take that question?
I can.
Go ahead, Arnold.
So there's about I haven't counted recently, so you guys hold me accountable. But if you go to the domainconnect.org website, I'll put in a plug for that. We list all the supporting service and DNS providers. There's probably about 15 to 20 DNS providers, and I'm going to say 30 to 35 service providers. So I can rattle off a few. If you want.
Do a little bit of name dropping here, yeah.
Do some name dropping. So on the DNS provider side, I think you're hearing from the two or three of the bigger ones that support it. I think it's more interesting to talk about the service providers. And so obviously Automatic's here with us, and in Pawel, in my case, and even in Jan's case, we're both service providers and DNS providers. But it's also supported by Google G Suite. It's supported by Office 365 from Microsoft. It's supported by Squarespace, by Shopify. So some pretty big big names. Who am I missing that's really big? I mean, there's other ones too, obviously, in a list of 35. Right. But it's really supported by certainly the major players.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, so let's extend ourselves out. This is a project that is now 4 years old. It's gone through 3 hackathons. It's being rolled out. Let's talk about, is there anything left to be done, and is it something that they can help with, or is it something that we're just going to be doing at the next hackathon? What's left to be done?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that we've envisioned as we've talked about it that it could help with. One great example of this is that right now DNSSEC, for example, is a pretty hard thing for users to set up. So we're exploring whether it can be used as an enabler to help with that protocol. So that might be the future. In terms of what can be done today, right now, you said that we have these 4 companies and we're all getting along and agreeing, which is wonderful. But pretty universally, when we talk about this with other DNS provider companies and other service provider companies, they all kind of look at it and go, why wouldn't I do this? And so really I think what's next is we just need more people to adopt it. We need people to pick it up and do implementations, so we get, instead of having 50% of the domains on the internet covered, we get to 80 and 90% of the domains on the internet that are covered with this protocol. It'll just make things easier for people to use it. So I think that's the immediate ask.
Wonderful. Pawel, why don't you take this question? Because you had to do this implementation, right? So there's a bunch of people out there, and the last thing they want to do is have to install a bunch of stuff on 1,000 servers. How hard is this to implement in an organization?
All right, so Domain Connect is a protocol which allows a hoster to easily configure the services. And actually, what Hackathon showed this year, that implementation can be as easy as 2 days of work, right? So it can be a really non-high bar for integration if you want to support it. And this is the step I would advise anyone to take as a very first step. Then it's worth looking inside your whole software stack if Domain Connect can serve you better. This is what we did for N1 Ionos, and we benefit from it in full length because we kind of choose Domain Connect as our main DNS orchestration layer. This is a, let's say, second level that someone may take, but I say the first one is the most important one, and this one is very easy to take. Yeah, and especially with the code that was done in the hackathon this year, there is a basis just to copy and apply it to your system.
Wonderful.
Well, if I would add to the previous question a bit, what can be needed on top? So right now we have a good outreach to DNS providers, to service providers. We have Plesk on board and cPanel on board. And I think for anyone offering middleware for web hosting companies should also get active in this area, because their customers are not able to implement it on their own, but they are looking for a solution and they need this solution. So I think they are the same important to the whole ecosystem. And right now we have Plesk and cPanel on board, but we don't see others.
Okay, so they're interested. Is it just a simple, and whoever wants to grab this one, is it just a matter of going to domainconnect.org and following instructions? How do they get what they need to know in order to roll this out in their organizations?
Yeah, it actually is that easy. You really go only to domainconnect.org, and all the integrations that we've done, for example, the one for Plesk, that's open source as well. It's just on github.com, so you can get inspired by the code. But you can do it yourself. I mean, it's a matter of really, like Pawel said, 2 days or so. In the end, then maybe a bit of fine-tuning, because it's an essential part that really needs to be proven and tested well. You also can start in iterations and say, like, okay, then first iteration is just to configure the A records, and a bit later you take care of mail. So there are plenty of ways how you can do that to have first results quite quickly, and then enhance it and yeah, make it a full solution over time.
Okay.
And yeah, in the end, rest is open source. Yeah, you can also connect with us. Just ask us for help. Slack, of course. Exactly, and that's actually quite cool because there are all the people that support Domain Connect are in the Slack channel. So best place to just connect and discuss things.
Perfect. Well, let me see, my history, I had hosting software, I did the hosting company stuff, and now I'm an independent guy. And when I think back, I'm looking at, this is what I got as a summary. Easy to deploy, happier customers, lower support costs, and better customer retention and upsells in the future. And I didn't hear a bad thing in that list. I think that sounds like a pretty good thing. Okay, so that said, we have just a few moments left. Does anybody out the audience have any questions for our panel of experts? They're the ones to ask. Please, right here, wait for the microphone. And if you have a question, please wait for the microphone.
It sounds all really good, but my concern is how do you verify that the domain owner or admin C is the person that is actually configuring the records? That you're not going to have a man-in-the-middle attack or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you the short answer. The protocol's actually extremely simple. So what happens when you're at the service provider and you're going to configure the domain is the service provider forms a link, just a web link that is a link to a page on the DNS provider site. So if I'm at Squarespace, I click this link and then a browser window pops open at, in my case, GoDaddy. GoDaddy has the user log in. Then GoDaddy confirms that the user actually owns the domain being configured, because obviously you don't want to have a silly attack like that. Then GoDaddy says, hey, it looks like you're trying to set up Squarespace web hosting or websites to work with your domain xyz.com. Do you confirm this? And then GoDaddy presents that to the user clicks OK, and we make the change. So there is an authentication step in the protocol. The user's logging in and confirming the change. So I can get into more details after the session, but it's
as an incompetent end user, when I actually used it last year to set up an account for somebody, and it was like PayPal. You click the PayPal button. Yeah, you PayPal button. PayPal pops up and says, "Hey, I'm PayPal. I know who you are. Enter your password. Boom. Is this what you want to do? Yes." And it was done.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And if they can make it so that I can do it, yeah, that's good. Okay, good. Does anybody else have a question? We're happy to answer them. That's it. These people are available. They're here. They're mainstays here at CloudFest. They're going to be around. If you have questions, make sure you track them down. Go to domainconnect.org for more information. I recommend it to everybody as an end user. Make my life happy, please. Thank you all. I want to please thank our panelists, please.